Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, and today, folks, well, there's no more Steelers football left, at least until, we get into July, August with the preseason, September with the regular season, whatnot. But you know what I mean. There's only 2 games left to talk about. Yeah, there's 2. There's the Super Bowl, and then there's that other game, the Pro Bowl. Oh, my God. You guys think I'm crazy. You're going to talk about the Pro Bowl today, Joe, aren't you? Yeah, you know what? I was even considering going. You must be nuts. I know what you're thinking. That guy is crazy. Oh, hear me out here. You already know I'm nuts. If you're a first-time listener, well, you're in on the secret now. I'm a crazy guy sometimes. And let me tell you, I thought about this. I thought long and hard. My wife thinks I'm crazy, too. Of course, I think most women think that their husbands are crazy. So that's not anything out of the ordinary. Going to the Pro Bowl. I thought to myself, you know what? My plans to Houston canceled. Oh, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to cope when it comes to football? And then it was like, hey, you know what? The Killer Bees are all going to be there. Ben Roethlisberger, 5 Steelers selected to the Pro Bowl. Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and then lineman Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro. This is exciting. You know what? Pro Bowl, not usually that well attended. I mean, who wants to fly to Hawaii? That's costly. And I'm on the East Coast here. Well, almost the East Coast. I'm in the Midwest. But you may as well considering I'm flying from the Eastern time zone to Honolulu. Nice flight, but who wants to pay that money and spend that much time in a plane for... The game sucks. I'm not going to actually see the game and root on, I don't care if the AFC or NFC or Michael Irvin's team or whatever they want to throw at you actually wins or loses. I was thinking to myself, you know what? This is probably some unprecedented, access to players that you don't normally get. NFL is always good at fan interaction. They got all these other things going on. They got this new drone thing that they're doing for the wide receivers. They're going to drop a ball. They got all these skill competitions coming back. They're trying to spice this, put some life back into this whole all-star mentality. I truly admire it, and I was like, man, it would be cool to kind of, almost like training camp where you could get up and close with players, and not just Steelers players, and not just, training camp, they have 90 guys, get all kind of random people who aren't even in the NFL or considering playing football again the rest of their lives now. And, cuts and roster things and blah, blah, blah. You're getting the cream of the crop, baby. These are the best of the best players in the National Football League. So why not? Looks like it's a cheap flight, cheap tickets for this and that. And then the news comes out. Ben's declining going. Le'Veon Bell, of course, hurt from that game with his groin. Antonio Brown declines. Marquise Pouncey pretty much does what Ben does, which terrifies me. I'm going to be talking about that more next week. So talking about just the Pro Bowl in general, it was like David DeCastro is the only guy left of those 5, and because of some other changes, of course, the teams who play in the Super Bowl, that would be that team I won't mention who the Pittsburgh Steelers lost to last Sunday in the AFC Championship, and the Atlanta Falcons. 10 players from those teams were selected. As you would think, the best teams probably have the best players, and therefore the best players should be Pro Bowlers. Correct. Absolutely. So 10 of those players are no longer going to play in this game because this game used to be played after the Super Bowl, and then everybody was eligible to play. And it still wasn't much of a game, but still. It was a change of pace. It was one more week of football. It was like the hangover after the Super Bowl. Yeah, you partied your heart out, and you want just a little more. Here's just a little bit more. But now instead of having that dead space between the conference championships and the Super Bowl, they decided to move the Pro Bowl in here. And if a few of these guys can't play, well, it's such a big deal. Now there's only 88 spots on this thing, and you pull 10 players off of that already, so you have 78. And then you have guys who get hurt, and guys like Le'Veon Bell and some others I'm going to mention. I don't know that I can mention all of them or all 88 players, and I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of these are very deserving. It's pretty cool that Ryan Shazier gets an invite as an alternate, so there are 2 Steelers. But for me personally, I'm going to save my money. As cool as it'd be to try and rub elbows with a few of these guys, through and through a diehard Steelers fan, as you may or may not know. And we were talking about this, I think, on the WTF podcast about favorite non-Steelers. And there's some that you may have, other players that you like and or respect. We all play fantasy football, so we're all fans of this game. Well, most of us play fantasy football. I know some people think that's still a silly thing. And this game was like a fantasy game for the last few years. You had honorary captains like Michael Irvin and Jerry Rice. And geez, I can't even remember now because it was really special for 1 year maybe. Then it wasn't. That's because they had to wear these like goofy, like fluorescent colored jerseys. And now you have players that are just declining left and right. All kinds of guys are hurt, don't want to go. And now the game's in Orlando, which I said is kind of like the equivalent of, I don't know. You yank the company picnic, or those of you familiar with National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Clark Griswold just waiting for his bonus, opens up the envelope and gets the Jelly of the Month Club instead. Remember, Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving. It really seems like a kick in the pants. And maybe even for the players, too. I was wondering to myself what these players might feel like. I mean, I suppose if you're a kicker and they only pick 2, you got 2 spots, an AFC kicker and an NFC kicker. Now you're back to the conference thing. You don't even have the fantasy football thing, which was kind of neat to watch on TV. A little drawn out, seemed a little disorganized, to be completely honest, but it was still something different. And he got to fill some network time on NFL Network. So that had to be good for them. Maybe a little bit of ratings as opposed to just a recap show of some sort. But I don't know. Now you're back to this conference thing. So I guess if you're a kicker and Matt Bryant's not going, he's the kicker for ageless kicker. I didn't realize he was in his 40s as well. There's several kickers that are up in north of 40 besides Vinatieri, and I think Phil Dawson's the other one for the 49ers, formerly of the Cleveland Browns. So Matt Bryant going to be kicking in the Super Bowl. Obviously, he's not going to go pack his bags and go to Orlando this weekend. So you get the call and you're an alternate. That's pretty darn cool. I mean, there's 16 teams in each conference. Only one gets to go. That means 14 other people aren't going besides you, provided that 6 or 7 people ahead of you didn't decline, and that's what happened with the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks. They wonder why the Pro Bowl's broken and what you can do to maybe fix it. Some people think don't even play a game. I'm not necessarily against that. Not at all. It has gotten to a point where it's like you can't even give these things away for free. I may get invited to go play in the Pro Bowl. And just taking a look at some of the players, there's a lot of first-time players. I mean, Jay Ajayi gets in here. Melvin Gordon gets in here for the AFC. DeMarco Murray, well-deserved. There's a number of players that, David DeCastro obviously deserves it. Travis Kelce or Delaney Walker as tight ends. Even the wide receiver bunch is just, I don't know. I think Emmanuel Sanders gets in here and a few other players. But you look at the quarterbacks, and Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. You can't tell me that both the Broncos wide receivers had amazing years, but once again, we're looking at, you got to look at it from a star power standpoint too, and that's what I'm going to say here in a second. You had, this year was 10 invitations short of the record, which was last year, and that game was played in Hawaii, so that means they sent out 133 invites for 88 spots. And granted, injuries, guys going to the Super Bowl, but just doing the math with all of these extra positions, all the extra invitations that end up going out. You got 133 for 88 spots. That's 45 alternate players. And like I said, 10 less than last year. It means 35, and 10 of them were going to the Super Bowl. That's 25. You only have 44 on one roster. That's 25. That's almost enough for a whole other team. Kind of cheapens it. So is it still an honor to play in the Pro Bowl for some of these players? And what can you do to fix all of this? Well, for starters, when it comes to injuries and stuff, I'd always thought that the Pro Bowl would be pretty neat to see. And now they've moved this meaningless extra preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, which exists because they want football at the Hall of Fame. And it's been done for whatever. And I agree there should be something going on. They've moved it to Thursday night because they have like this just, I don't want to use improper term, but let's say infatuation, if I could even say it, with Thursday night. So that game's been moved up. I always thought the Pro Bowl would be kind of neat to play a Hall of Fame weekend, but nobody wants to lose one of their players in this game. In fact, that's why most of these guys aren't playing. It's turned into the equivalent of the meaningless college bowl games where we see all these collegiate players who want to enter the NFL, make big money contracts. They don't want to blow out their knee in a pinstripe bowl playing a team that was like, well, I don't want to say 9-7. They don't play 16 games in college, but you get my drift. Teams that lost 5 and 6 games throughout the year, making it into a bowl game. Pretty ridiculous, too. And then they play it at like 2 in the afternoon Eastern time, which means nobody can watch it unless you're somewhere else, like in the UK or something, maybe. You can watch it and you're not at work. Random weeknight. But you see all these invites. I was talking about the quarterbacks. And you got, okay, so originally Ben Roethlisberger, we know he's out. Tom Brady's out. He's playing in the Super Bowl. And then Derek Carr got hurt. Now, Alex Smith replaced Derek Carr initially. I won't say that's too bad. Alex Smith, solid QB. His team made the playoffs. Kudos to him. I think he's a very underrated guy. I also don't think he does a whole lot, but you know what? He's smart. He does what's good for him. No knock on Alex Smith. Pro Bowler. Sure. Okay. Alternate. Fine. Then we have Andy Dalton, who was actually selected last season but couldn't play because he hurt his finger. If you remember, he didn't play against the Steelers in that playoff game, wild card game with A.J. McCarron. And then let's not talk about that. That game is crazy. It just brings up all kinds of bad memories. A lot of ill will there. So you start you're scraping the barrel here, and what ends up happening is you've got guys like Marcus Mariota who had a really good year. Ryan Tannehill, his team, the Dolphins, makes the playoffs, but Tannehill got hurt and then didn't get in. Andrew Luck, who's a solid quarterback. Don't know that he had a really fantastic year, but he was hurt. So all these guys are hurt. They're not available. You only have 16 teams in the conference. You've already gone through the original 3. Oh, there's 2 more that they extended the invite to. Also, Trevor Siemian for the Broncos. Don't ask me why. Broncos don't make the playoffs either, nor does the Buffalo Bills and Tyrod Taylor. He ran around, scrambled, blah, blah, blah. I guess Simeon might have been because he's an Orlando native. Maybe they were thinking there's some tie-in there that might get a few people excited to show up and buy a ticket. I don't know. So there's 5 guys that are hurt. The original 3 is 8. And the 2 replacements is 10. You only have 6 left. Guys like Joe Flacco, Brock Osweiler, who got benched mid-season. Cleveland Browns have a quarterback. They had 6 of them this year. Who would you pick from that team? May as well say there's only 5 more left. So it ends up going to Phillip Rivers. And I'm not necessarily too bothered by that. Phillip Rivers, as we know, came out of that same quarterback class with Ben Roethlisberger and Eli Manning and has had a tremendous career. Probably hasn't done as much as he should for a player of his caliber, but a lot of it has to do with the coaching carousel and all the mess it is. I wanted to say in San Diego, but they're now in L.A. They're moving. And Phillip Rivers, actually, this is probably the reason. Speaking of, he says this will be his last game as a San Diego Charger, playing in Orlando. That's a little silly, but Phillip Rivers, in all seriousness, threw 21 interceptions this year, which is the most he's ever thrown in a single season in his entire career, and he's considered a Pro Bowler. Does that cheapen the distinction of being a Pro Bowler, because you have to play in the game to be considered a Pro Bowler, or so they're saying, even though you're selected. So I guess Ben doesn't get the, when somebody goes and they put Ben up against like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady's stats and stuff, well, Tom Brady's not going to be in it either, but they're going to say, well, Ben only played in there's so many Pro Bowls. But yeah, he actually was selected to a few more. I guess that's the way it works. Guys, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a know-it-all, but that's what I read. This Pro Bowl stuff's confusing. Try figuring out all the people that were invited as alternates. The 35 changes. At least I had the 10 because I knew who was going to the Super Bowl and whatnot, and I have the rosters, and this roster I have is a few days old. It's probably wrong, too. So that's why I'm not going through all of these, to be completely honest. But you get my point. Does it hurt a guy like Ryan Shazier finally making it to the Pro Bowl? Especially in place of C.J. Mosley, a division rival who was hurt. We all know I don't like Mosley. I think he's a little overrated. And we all thought Shazier would get to this point. I think it's pretty cool for him. I thought he had a good year. He was a little banged up. But you know what? He rocked it at the end, man. Was that 3-4 games with an interception in a row? Pretty darn cool. I think he's a game changer. I think it's somewhat deserving. It's not like the quarterback list where with linebackers, at least there's several of them on a team, inside linebacker in particular. So, not quite quarterback. I guess it depends if you play a 3-4 and a 4-3 also, because you may only have one inside linebacker depending on the sub-package or the formation. But you get my drift. There's more linebackers than quarterbacks to choose from. So I guess maybe it is an honor for somebody like Ryan Shazier. Maybe the same for David DeCastro. Not like there's a whole ton of guards. Right guard for David DeCastro. So, and he's an initial guy and not an alternate. So some of these other guys that got picked as alternates, like I said, Jay Ajayi, he had a great year. Melvin Gordon, a little more of a standout than previously. So I'm just trying to figure out, do you think it cheapens the accolade of being called a Pro Bowler when you are that far down the alternate list? I don't know. I guess it really depends on the situation is what I'm saying. So what can you do to fix this Pro Bowl? I mentioned earlier maybe moving it up, playing it at a different time of the year. Maybe they just scrap this thing. You can completely get rid of it. I don't know. I think the time it's played and getting rid of some of these stars, maybe Tom Brady would play in it if it was the week after the Super Bowl. Same with Matt Ryan, some of these other guys. Hawaii, far away. Fans aren't really going there. You need to do something to get attendance. How about putting it in L.A.? Not bad weather there. Put it in the soccer stadium that the Chargers are supposed to play in. Get that thing prepped, baby. We want to see what a football game looks like in this building. And you know what? It's like half as many seats there, like 30,000 as opposed to like 60,000. You may actually sell some tickets and make this thing look a little full. Go to some smaller markets. Go down to Alabama. Well, they got the Senior Bowl going on there. Maybe that's why it's in the forefront of my memory. Go to Vegas. Maybe there's a spot in Vegas, a university or college they could play at. Vegas would be one heck of a destination joint, wouldn't it? I don't think the weather's too terrible in San Antonio, another place always linked to having games. I think we could pretty much rule out, though, that this game would be ever played in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo. Detroit has a dome. That's a possibility. But a lot of the other things they'd have to do indoors. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Here's a 3-day ticket and you get all this. Why don't you just make it flag football? Then you don't even have to worry about the contact. Not at all. You can still get hurt doing other things, though. Cutting. Maybe pile up. Somebody falls on you awkwardly. There's always going to be that risk. There's that risk if it's basketball or Major League Baseball. I think those other sports work better, by the way, because what's the requirement for basketball? You pick up a ball and you play. You don't see any defense in those games either. You see a lot of offense, and it's exciting. You get the home run derby with baseball. Baseball actually has something at stake as what team gets the home field advantage, or what league, I should say. So whichever league wins, the team that comes out of that gets the extra home game in the World Series. I don't know that sort of gimmick would necessarily work in the NFL. They play at a neutral site, so there's one out the gate. What do? Let them pick what uniform they wear? A lot of it's really dictated by record as to who's the home and away team. What kind of stakes could you possibly have? I had an idea for this middle week, by the way, and I wonder how many people would like to see another Steelers game this year. You know, FIFA, they have the World Cup and the Olympics. They have the bronze medal. The World Cup has a third-place game. I was wondering, do people, and now I understand, you've already lost, you're not going to the Super Bowl. But how cool would it be to have one more game? I'm sure you could fill a stadium, at least partially, with Steelers and Packers fans if you took the two conference losers. It could be done, especially if that game were played at one of their home buildings. I think people would show up, be thankful, still screaming their head off, get to see a little bit more football. Is there enough incentive, though, for these multimillionaire players? Would Ben play in a game like that, or would they throw Landry Jones in there? I'll tell you what, though. It was a lot of fun seeing Landry Jones and the backups beat up on the Cleveland Browns in the last game of the regular season. So it happens in the regular season, and people still show up. Maybe not charge as much for the tickets. I don't know. Will people sit in cold weather for a game that really, hey, they're going to win third place? I don't have an answer to that, but it's another game. It means TV would be interested. Push that Pro Bowl out or away. I don't know. I think the NFL honors thing's kind of cool. You could always show highlights and clips of players and things of that nature. That's something that maybe they should just do that for the Pro Bowl guys. Hey, this is what they did for the year. More exciting than the game? Potentially. We always want to see football, though. That's why I think a third-place game, it might be okay. I just don't know if anybody would really, really sign up for it, knowing that if somebody blows out their knee, they could be done for the beginning of next, or most of, if not the entire season. It's not that far away. What, 7-8 months? You need a lot longer to recover from a knee injury than that. So that might not be the best idea, but it's at least one to throw out there. I think the location could move around, like I was saying. Maybe not in the Midwest. Maybe not anywhere where there's cold weather. So I thought that maybe some of that might be a problem with people in Hawaii that would want to hold on to this game, but they've already shown. They played it in Miami, I think, once or twice, and now it's in Orlando. So they're kind of moving it around. And I guess Orlando does fit the smaller scenario, situation, warm weather, resort kind of town, trying to see if it's viable for maybe an NFL franchise. That would be kind of neat. How about the spring league that they're going to try and have, which I think is a fantastic idea, and it's a podcast all its own. But if you could get that thing rolling and have some of those games starting up right now, although I think they're going to have to wait. I think that's going to have to be played somewhere between the combine and the draft. A handful of games, you get to watch that and see some guys you haven't seen, and it might benefit some teams too. It used to with the whole NFL Europe thing. So I don't know, folks. No Pro Bowl for me. I'm not going to go to it. I probably won't even watch it. I'll try to. I may talk about this next week, but that's about it. I'd like to know what your feelings are on all this. Is it worthwhile? I guess just name the teams and that's it? Or should they actually play a game? I really like the thing with the quarterbacks they used to do. I want to see that. I hope they have that. Throw it through the tires, hit the moving target bullseyes. I remember like Steve Young doing that and Troy Aikman and all these guys, the quarterback challenge. That type of stuff's really cool. We could keep that, right? We could do stuff like that. Oh, they're going to have dodgeball. I wonder who's invited to that. If it's just Pro Bowl players or if we could see like Vontaze Burfict and Vince Williams play dodgeball on different teams. I think that would be pretty cool. But you know what? I digress. Until next time, be safe, be good, enjoy that Pro Bowl, and I'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.